morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the take on this Thursday morning. Yes, Cinco de Mayo. And given what the markets are giving us right now, there might be a little bit of that tequila going down for a lot of people. This is a pretty bumpy road, but let's start off with yesterday where the bump actually was a bump that moved to the upside. Powell, the Fed, everybody knows it by now. If you go back to last Friday even, we were down 935 points. Yesterday, once we got the Fed chair sitting up there after flatlining for the entire session, it felt like until 2 o'clock, he delivered and the markets delivered and the markets loved what they heard and the markets actually finished up. We were down 935 last Friday or something close to that. We were up 932 points yesterday. Sometimes it is absolutely amazing. And you look over at the NASDAQ, had a really, really strong close on the day as well, up 400 points. It ran 500 points throughout that session from the lows to get up to there to finish up 400 points. So gives you a really good idea of just how strong, how powerful it was yesterday. Well, we're seeing a lot of give back. It started out as a little give back, but a lot of give back today. First, let's look at that volatility. We talked about volatility getting back underneath that 30 level. Not only we get underneath that 30 level, we closed essentially on the lows of the session for the volatility index down there towards 2540. We got a little lower than that, but that was a pretty decent range. True. Target 25 all the way up to about 29.50. And there's where we closed down there on those lows, near those lows. 40.6 million contracts trading yesterday. That was nice to see as well. Crude oil kind of moving around a little bit, up about 5%, up from 103, actually finished the day well over 107. Silver kind of stood out. We'd seen a little bit of activity in the options in there. We also in SLV, but we also had silver had a pretty decent move to the upside as well with gold just sort of hanging around where it's been. So where were we really seeing movement? Well, certainly on energy. I just mentioned crude. Energy up 4%. Matter of fact, energy today is the only sector that's in the green, just moved into the green a little while ago. It might get pulled back with the markets, the way the markets are trading right now. But Chevron, Exxon, Conoco, BP, you name it, we were absolutely on fire yesterday when you look at energy. Then the communication sector, Facebook, Google, Charter, those names, that was up about just under 4% yesterday as well. Technology up 3.5%. The big boys were contributing. You had Tesla, you had Amazon, you had Apple, all there along with Microsoft. Throw that one in there as well. Materials having a really strong day, well over 3%. Matter of fact, when I look at all the various sectors from yesterday, you were looking at a big bulk of those sectors actually well over a 3% move to the upside. Look at the financials, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, you get the idea, Citi, Morgan Stanley, you name it. Everything seemed to have been moving to the upside yesterday based upon what we were hearing from the Fed, a lot of that acceleration late in the day. There were other names out there, post earnings and so forth. Specifically, I look over at Starbucks, then I look over at AMD, had a pretty nice Airbnb, another one of those, Match.com, Moderna, all had a pretty strong day yesterday. Honeywell, Caterpillar, throw in IBM, which oftentimes gets kicked off to the side, but IBM had a better day than probably most people would have ever expected. There was pressure on the market a little bit from some areas, but not enough to really push those markets at all to the downside. But there was some negatives out there. Palo Alto Networks was one of them. I look over at Skyworks as well. ACAM, Akamai is another one of those. So we did have a few that were in the red. Not everything was in the green. Today, we're seeing a heck of a lot of red ourselves. It started off a little quiet. We actually started the day, we're down about 150 points. Makes a little sense. You have that big, huge run. You expect to give a little bit back. NASDAQ was down about 100 points. By the time we opened, we're down 300 on the Dow. We're down about 200 on the NASDAQ. We have been accelerating to that downward side ever since. Right after the open, just continues that push to the downside. Down 400, then 500, then 600, over 600 points to the downside on the Dow, over 450 points to the downside on the NASDAQ. Last I looked, just before we came on, crude oil was hanging around that 109 to 110 area. I look at the volatility index. We started the day, even though it was accelerating to the downside, we started off the day 25s, 26s. That was okay. Now we've started to slide a little bit higher. Last I looked, we were well over 28. So we'll obviously be keeping an eye on the volatility index throughout the session as well. Then you've got Bitcoin started off the day okay. That was up there near that 39,500 level. Take a look over at the 10-year. I'm not sure where it is right now, but last I looked, we were up about 293. Then we got actually over 3. And that's something that I know a lot of people are focusing on, and obviously something that everybody has, especially with Fed just delivering yesterday. A lot of people focused on all those different rates, and 10-year being one of them, the 2-year, all those. Everybody's taking a look at those, and 10-year over 3. So shows you a little bit of something about what's going on. Now, back to earnings for just 1 second. Just going to focus on one, Shopify. They were terrible. Even before the markets, you look at this name, they had a huge miss on the earnings. The revenue was in line, but almost kind of a miss. You look at those numbers, that's why that stock was getting hammered pretty good as we started off the day before we even got into this big slide to the downside. Technology was only down a little over 1.5%, just giving back a little bit. Last I looked, we were down about 3%. Consumer discretion, sort of the same story, down about 4% after starting off just a little bit of a pullback. Financials, we're off about 1.5%. Next thing you know, you blink of an eye, down 2.25%. Energy did, as I say, make a little bit of a move into the green. I can't see it right this moment, but we did have a little bit of a move into the green, but it started off the day a little bit of negative territory as everything seemed to be giving a little bit of a push to the downside. So there were areas before we got into this big slide that were standing out, at least for me, that looked at least pretty solid on a day where we were seeing a little bit of primarily red in the system. So Twitter, definitely one of those names as Elon Musk continues to navigate around and all the rest of it. And we've heard more about some of the others that are maybe contributing as well to his cause to have the ownership of Twitter. That stock was up near that 51 level. You had other names like Datadog, Palo Alto Networks. We had Kellogg in there as well. Albemarle, another one of those names that was pushed to the upside. But we were dominated. Let's get honest. We were dominated by downside pulls. Looking at names like Etsy and eBay. Moderna turned after yesterday's big run. Skyworks and Qorvo getting hit a little bit. PDD, JD, look at some of those Chinese names. Most of the ones that I looked up were in the red early on. I did mention also earlier, but PayPal, Netflix, throw in some Salesforce. I'll tell you, the big cap tech, that has been the mover of late. Had a pretty strong day yesterday across the board. Today, some weakness, certainly. You look at Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Salesforce, as I mentioned, all getting pulled to the downside, having a huge influence on what we are seeing in all the major indices as well. Now, the interesting thing is, before it slid even further down, we did see some call buying in Apple. This is one of those situations where it's actually maybe a good thing to see that we did have call buying. We had 15,000 of the June 10th expiring 170 calls, but the stock was trading around 163. I looked over it a little while ago. Stock was trading about 160, 161. Those calls that were going for about $3.10 were a lot closer to $2.50. So if you think that initial buying actually just got caught up in the wash of this push to the downside, it might be something you want to keep a close eye on. I certainly will be, because each and every time that we've seen some of this very large option paper in certain names, I definitely want to follow along. But this is why sometimes it's okay for a little bit of a pause, just take a look, take a breath, and see what's going on without the market. I've got some puts out there as well. We don't normally talk a lot about puts. We don't normally talk a lot about indices, but we have this week a little bit. This one's the XLI, so the industrials. This one's pretty interesting. It was trading 97.60 at the time of this trade. They bought 13,500 of the July 95 puts. So these are puts. These are out of the money, because puts you're looking for downside. So the out of the money puts, the 95 puts, going for about $2.70 up to about a little over $3 for those puts. 13,500 of them. We have seen a lot of put buying over the last 2, 3, 4 sessions. Some of it looking like it's buying protection. Others of it looking like maybe some speculation that there might be some more downside. Puts are very, very difficult. We all know that. We talk about it all the time. It's much easier to discern what's going on with the calls. But I think it's very important to know that there are some buying of these puts in the XLI today. I will be on the halftime report. We will be talking about a lot of the different subject matters that obviously are getting seen within the markets today. We got a bunch of great guests up there. Hopefully we can get some usual. We'll do 2, maybe 3. We're supposed to be on for doing 3. We'll see if we do. Sometimes they restrict that time frame, but you know what? It's all good. We just got to roll with the punches. Folks, have a great day of trading.